Hello, hello, this is Postgres FM, and today, as usual, only two of us. Not as usual, sometimes we have guests, right? So, my name is Nikolai, Postgres AI, and my co-host is Michael, PG Mustard. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Nikolai.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I'm very good. So you decided actually. I probably wouldn't decide myself, but you decided suddenly, and this is a coincidence, I guess. Hopefully, yesterday Postgres 17 was released. So let's talk about some features, random features we just picked up from the list. It has a long list of features, right? As usual.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Hundreds. So we're definitely not going to be able to talk about the vast majority of them. So it'd be good to hear looking through the list, which are your favorites. But before that, I think it's worth saying it's actually really impressive. A group of distributed people shipping to a release date that they've set quite a little while in advance. You know, they've had several betas, a release candidate a few weeks ago, and barring, I haven't seen any big issues, so I'd be surprised if it isn't, but completely respect the people making the final decision if they have decided to postpone. But yeah, it's really impressive that they can ship to a date and each year we get a new major release. I think that's not super common in large distributed projects to get major releases annually, same time every year. Almost you could set your calendar by it.
yeah, it sounds like obligation, which usually is happening inside big corporations, right? Like, let's plan to do this and be consistent.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of infrastructure or like a kind of things like the commit fests that mean, you know, there's a feature freeze many, many months in advance. And that's the kind of thing that allows them to be predictable. Like if they allowed features to go in nearer the end, that would almost certainly postpone things if something went wrong. It means there's tons of time to revert things if needed. There were a couple of things reverted again this time.
Well, one of the most popular Linux distributions is doing similar thing, right?
Which one?
Ubuntu.
Oh,
Releases
yeah.
are like this structure defined long ago, and every year two releases, right? And there are long-term support releases as well, and this is similar to Postgres has.
Yeah, good point.
Postgres doesn't have LTS, but
yeah, we don't have almost every version's LTS. I feel like in Postgres, like it's supported for 5 years.
Postgres don't have this concept. But my point is that it's also like planned dates of releases, right? Same thing.
Yeah, true. Another good example.
And also quite popular project.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Also open source.
Yeah,
right. But there is a single company behind it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, well, okay. I also wanted to mention that those who listen us regularly should already remember some features coming with this release, right? We discussed a few of them recently in previous episodes. Transaction timeout was whole episode. What else?
Yeah,
Vacuum improvements.
Yeah, the vacuum improvements came up when we had a good conversation with Melanie, and we talked to
With
Peter Gagan
Gagan.
recently. Yeah, and that work is split over 17 and 18. But even since we spoke to Peter, there have been some cool blog posts about those improvements and people benchmarking them against real workloads, and the results are pretty cool. So both Benoit, who we mentioned in the episode, has published a blog post that I'll link up, and the Crunchydata team, I think it was Brander, published a great blog post benchmarking those improvements. I believe it's almost entirely due to those improvements. So yeah, that was really cool. And I think there's one more as well. Yes, we discussed with Haki Benita Get or Create, in which the topic of merge returning came up, which we're getting in 17. So yeah, for at least 4 of the several hundred features we've discussed.
I also like maybe this will be a start already. I wanted to congratulate basically Andrei Borodin, who has multiple contributions in this release, and 2 of them were started during Postgres TV online hacking sessions. And it's transaction timeout and also UUID version 7 functions. Unfortunately, Postgres 17 doesn't have UUID version 7 because there was decision to wait until finalization of RFC. So standard needs to be out. Actually, it also was controversial decision because many libraries already implemented UUID version 7, a lot of them, Node.js library, Go library, many, relying on the fact that it's very unlikely that something will change. But Postgres decided to be more conservative and, well, it's okay. But Postgres 17 has a function UUID extract timestamp. So we can, like, it's a preparation basically. And also UUID extract version to return UUID information. And I remember also this decision to have this function also was controversial. The authors of standard didn't encourage the fact that we can extract timestamp from UUID version 7. It's interesting, right? UUID version 7 is not supported, but already there are functions which are prepared to work with it. And they are not part of standard. Maybe that's why they are being released, right? But to me, this is an interesting feature because I think it's already so. For our clients during consulting sessions, when we see UUID version 4 being used as primary key, we say don't do it. Because there are many articles already showing, with benchmarks showing how bad it is to have, for B-tree health, it's bad to insert in arbitrary places, insert, basically randomly, right? And UUID version 7, it has benefits from both worlds. Actually, I think we had an episode about...
I think we did.
Yeah, maybe I was alone, actually. Yeah, so we encourage to use UUID version 7, and interesting that it's easy to move from UUID version 4 to version 7 in existing project. If you have big table already, they have the same similar format, right? So you don't need to change anything besides how default is organized or how you insert value itself. So no table structure changes, which is good. And yeah, I think this fact that now we have a function which allows us to extract timestamp if it's version 7, which has timestamp, it means also probably in many cases we can avoid additional 16 bytes for column created at, because we can get this information right from the ID column. And also we can work with this information to have time-based partitioning. Even Timescale DB can work with this. I have a recipe somewhere. I think we also discussed this.
That's the one I joined you for, partitioning.
Oh, okay. So we had two episodes about UUID version 7 and how to partition with it. It's very, I think it's very basic, important tricks to know about.
Yeah.
Because it can be useful in many systems, right? So, and this function now is part of core of Postgres. So, just use it. It's great. What else? What else you want to discuss?
Well, maybe as a starting point, do you have a favorite kind of theme or area of improvement in 17?
Well, my overall impression, I had this in many previous Postgres versions when they were released. Impression is a lot of small stuff, but sometimes it's very important stuff for some projects. There's no huge thing in this release, right? And of course, I like transaction timeout because it was my idea. I like it a lot, right? So, and I'm very grateful to Andrei who implemented this online. And I like that we have it. Now I have further idea. We started discussing. Let me share it. So I was thinking, a log min duration statement setting defines when it's similar to timeout basically, but instead of canceling your transaction, issuing rollback, right? It just logs.
So you're thinking log min duration transaction?
I think about transaction. I think about idle and transaction state as well. Instead of canceling, we could just log and maybe draw some, let's not cancel, but warn, right? That something is not good here happening.
Yeah.
Basically, each transaction consists of only 3 normal states. Either we execute some statement, or we don't execute something, right? We are idle between 2 statements or between statement and commit, for example.
So what's the third?
Third is the whole.
What do you mean?
Oh, sorry. 2 states, but also there's a whole. Sorry. Yeah,
okay,
you're right.
I understand.
So
No, I thought I was being
either we
stupid.
do something or we don't do anything inside transaction. There is also state outside, which is idle, right? And there's a whole. So basically, three timeout settings make sense. This already finally fully implemented in 2024. But also, it would make sense to warn just logging, right? Maybe it's a good idea as well, right?
I think so.
I
Like,
just came. This idea came to me like a few days ago. Honestly, maybe I should write to hackers about this.
so you mean like as an administrator or somebody looking after this database, I can start to think, eek, we could be in trouble here if we let this get out of hand. Instead of punishing the users or whoever is actually in the middle of a long transaction, we could proactively go about, can we optimize those things? What are they doing? Like before they cause us problems, instead of kicking them out, we could.
Yeah. Well, I see sometimes people hesitate. Like we usually in OLTP, we recommend very low values for all timeouts because my usual approach is why HTTP server has like 30-second timeout or 60-second, but on database, which is like even more dangerous to do something very long when people already don't need it, why don't you limit it, right? So we advise to limit very aggressively. But sometimes people hesitate, oh, what happens? So logging would be first thing, right?
Cool, I get it. So like selling it into as a change, it's easier to encourage people to start logging those.
Yeah. But of course, naming will be hard as usual because idle session transaction timeout, I remember. Yeah, this was one of the longest, maybe the longest name. And this also triggered my thoughts. It's slightly off topic, but let me share quickly. I think lock timeout is named very wrong. Very wrong. Because it's not lock timeout, it's a lock acquisition timeout. It doesn't define duration of waiting for lock being held. Because once lock is acquired, this timeout it's not in effect anymore, right?
Yeah.
So it should be lock acquisition timeout. Do we want lock timeout?
Waiting on lock,
Maybe no. Lock timeout. Maybe lock timeout would be needed additionally. So it's an interesting area when you try to think about systematically. Yeah, like there are not implemented areas also and naming things and so on. But it's interesting. Anyway, I not consider this as negative feedback. I'm just thinking how to improve. And maybe we will come up with new proposals and patches and so on.
By the way, I think I agree on your overall sentiment that there's no one huge feature in Postgres 17. Yeah. There are some big ones, like I think incremental backup was a lot of work, but it's not necessarily. It's not like when we got parallel query or when we first got declarative partitioning. Like there's no kind of headline feature, but there's a couple of themes I thought from the release notes. One, I think is in most Postgres releases, but there's a lot of performance improvements. A lot, maybe small, but some may be large, like we talked to Peter about, and like have been benchmarked. For some workloads, those could be large improvements. But it's not just that one. There's quite a lot of performance, like individual commits and features around performance. Again, not for the first time. And another theme is there seem to be quite a lot of improvements around logical replication.
Agreed as well, yeah. And it continues to be so. In 16, we had also a lot of improvements in this area. Yeah. Anything particularly you want to discuss in these two areas?
So performance, I'm going to point people towards the blog posts. I think the crunch data one in particular is brilliant. And basically the summary of that is for certain, I think largely, like I think that might be a Rails application. If not, I think it's an ORM based one. I need to check. But for certain workloads, even the preliminary work that Peter Geoghegan and Matthias Vanderment have done, obviously Peter said it could be any amount, but it could even be 20 to 30% on some workloads globally, like across the whole workload. I know individual queries could be like no faster or thousands of times faster depending on the individual cases. But those kind of numbers, 20 to 30% on a real endpoint, is massive. Like that if you don't need to do anything, that's a reminder. Like other than upgrading Postgres, you don't need to change your code, and you get that improvement. It's quite remarkable, I think.
Yeah, there are optimizations in the area of aggregate functions and also parallel processing, right? And not to forget optimizations in the vacuum, multiple optimizations from Melanie, right?
Yes. So yes, on top of the work that we discussed with Peter around in-list optimizations, basically the starts of the skip scan work. Yeah, we've got vacuum should be more efficient, not just through the work Melanie did, but a bunch of other ones. I think Analyze as well can now use like some defaults have been changed. There's one that's been bumped from 256 kilobytes to 2 megabytes on the shared buffer ring that can be used for vacuum and Analyze. So in a bunch of cases, they'll run faster without you having to change anything. For huge vacuums, I think was it the work Melanie did should really help with huge tables. So yeah, there's tons of improvements around that stuff. The parallelism one, I saw Tom Lane made a change that should allow more types of operation to run in parallel, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously, it's going to depend on individual workloads. It'd be great to hear some real world stories of people that do test these upgrades, and those are always really helpful and encourage others to upgrade as well.
We already started talking to our AI assistant, like let's benchmark something, and like I maybe should start this work earlier, but maybe like now we will find some examples. I think we will maybe start from analysis of mailing lists and find some interesting examples. But if there are real workload scenarios, it's also interesting. If I'm hunting for this, honestly, like what example could demonstrate the benefits from 17 so we could reproduce it in synthetic environment. It's always tricky, actually. When you have a live system, how to extract a piece of it and then have fake data and so on, it's like always tricky. Yeah. But I think something in the area of vacuuming definitely should be analyzed. And for example, I remember one of optimizations was how vacuuming of tables without indexes is done. But I doubt I will see, if I see some table without index in production, I will raise questions, of course. But yeah, but this is one of the things to check maybe, right?
It must be rare to have tables without indexes, but I imagine that people have done that extremely deliberately. Like anybody that does have a table without indexes, but that means there's no primary key. Like there's so many.
Yeah, no logical.
What? Yeah.
If you don't use replica identity full, which is not good sometimes and so on. Yeah. So you mentioned some settings, and I must return to Andrei Borodin and another his contribution, which was it was under development many years. This is ability to configure the size of various SLRU caches. And I think 2021 I wrote this article, right? It was related to incidents GitLab had with subtransactions.
Yeah.
And at that time, this patch was, I think, version 13, 14. This patch had many versions. So the ability to increase some caches. And one of the problems we analyzed at that time was not good problem when on the primary we had long transaction, we use subtransactions, and suddenly we see at some point degradation on all standbys because SLRU cache is overflown. But I must admit, at that time when we tested the patch and we tried to understand how the bigger size of SLRU cache will help. And in some cases it helped, but 3 years ago already, right? So I don't remember all the details, but as I remember, it was tricky. Not like linear effect. You double this and you have 2 more seconds until the problem hits you. So I think this is a good area also to check, but it requires 2-node setup. You need to do it on replica. That particular problem you need to inspect on replica. Unfortunately, our AI cannot do such experiments yet. I think maybe we should implement this. But it's not only about subtransaction SLRU, it's also about multi-exact buffers and so on. So it's interesting to see various performance cliffs and how we can mitigate them now in Postgres 17, because if we have some production incident related to multi-exact IDs and SRU buffer overflow, we can just increase it, right? At least to postpone this, to shift this cliff and think how to improve and avoid it completely.
Yeah, it's really cool. I see that, reading the release notes, I see that it comes with 7 new parameters.
Yeah.
But crucially, and I think this is really important, 3 of those scale up automatically with shared buffers.
Yeah, that's first time in Postgres,
really cool.
I think. Mm-hmm.
But that means I think fewer people will run into this in the first place. Because we have to tune shared buffers, and all cloud providers do by default. That means that these are going to be increased by default as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I wanted to check why upgrade by Depeche, which also provides the list of configuration changes, but unfortunately it doesn't support 17 yet.
I imagine bear in mind we're recording a few days ago, so there's a very good chance that Depeche is great at new version support.
Yeah, I always use that tool and that website and suggest our clients to use it. So it's very helpful indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else? What else do you want to discuss in this release?
Well, I've got a couple of favorites. In fact, we didn't really talk that much about logical replication. There's a bunch of changes, and I feel like probably the most important is that logical slots will now still exist after failover.
Yeah, that's great. In 16, it was already possible to use logical slots on physical standbys.
Yeah.
But if failover happens, or switchover, actually, doesn't matter if it's planned or not. The biggest problem with logical replication, you always lose it. You lose logical replication if failover happens or switchover. Yeah. And this means that you need to start from scratch with initialization. It's nightmare. And of course, recipes existed to solve this, but they were not official. For example, Patroni supported it for a couple of years already. And in Patroni, this problem was solved. But now it's solved in core in 17. So failover is not a headache anymore. But I must admit, logical is tricky. There are many issues. Yeah. And not obvious issues sometimes. As I remember, the problem with restarts is not yet solved. The problem with duplicates. During restart, you might see same changes coming in CDC stream again. And if on the subscriber you don't have a unique key, nobody can check them, and you end up having duplicates. I think this problem it's maybe a very hard problem to solve, because a slot position, LSN position, may be lagging a little bit, and during restart you might be losing. I might be mistaken, but I remember some practical problems in this area.
Well, and we were talking just before the call, there are still the major limitations that are worth remembering are that sequences aren't synchronized,
in DDL.
And DDL, of course. So, but I can imagine let's say in a few versions time, if each of those gradually get ticked off, we're going to...
Because there is work in progress. Yeah. Commit fests have it for quite some time, and I hope... Yeah, for example, a sequence, I just checked it. The patch for sequence replication and logical replication, it is waiting for review. So let's advertise it. If someone wants to help, this is a good point. And people need it. One of the biggest concerns with logical is lack of replication of sequences, DDL. And the third one was failover, but finally 17 solves it. But we had some 5 minutes of preparation before the show, and you mentioned that this feature... no, there is one more, sorry. Upgrades, right? You mentioned about upgrades.
PG upgrade, yeah.
So slot is not lost.
Yes.
Slot is not lost when you upgrade. This is another big thing, because usually if we perform major upgrade on Postgres, again, logical slots are lost. We need to reinitialize it. Again, headache. But now it's supported in 17. And you mentioned very correctly that it's supported only for very distant future, because the previous version should be 17. So it will be beneficial only in future upgrades to 18 and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Or from 17, whichever. Yeah. So even
We cannot upgrade from 17 yet anywhere. So,
exactly.
so we cannot use this feature this year basically at all.
But it makes sense. Like this is how it had to be implemented, right? Like unless you backpatch it.
Strategic
but
move, right?
yeah, it makes perfect sense, and it means in the future, like the world moves remarkably quickly. I remember when Postgres versions came out that are almost out of support now. Like that's it. It takes 5 years, but that can fly by. So I imagine we'll be using that quite soon.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine? I like
Yeah.
my contribution XML, not my like I was a little bit.
I know what you mean.
But it was 8.3.
Yeah. Wow.
2008. So yeah, I'm already. Yeah, and there are people who remember even the beginning. So yeah, it's interesting how much work is done and consistent work, right? It's great. But let me criticize a little bit once again. I have no idea why PG Await Events view is called so. And this is a dictionary. This is like just a list of course, we need a dictionary because so many wait events, right?
But, and crucially, I think it allows external providers to add. They can now add wait events and name and like give you information about them. So if you're an extension,
that's great. But
that's really cool.
But it's like there is PG logs, for example, and it's not a list of logs. So
I see what you mean.
Something is with naming. Like naming is one of two hardest computer science problems we know. Okay, so that's it. Like this is my feedback. It's great to have a list, but maybe, yeah, I expect some confusions in this area.
I think naming is hard even in a project where you have like a benevolent dictator or only a single developer. Naming is already difficult. Yeah. Naming in a distributed project when you can't really expect everybody to be aware of. Well, I mean, this might be an exception. This might be one that more people could have caught, but I think it's extremely hard in a distributed project.
And in this area, another example of issues with naming is there is a wait event called in pgstat activity, and it can be null. And many monitoring systems visualize it as a green area. It's I think it came from Oracle maybe, but RDS does it with Performance Insights. Patch Viewer does it. This is Java application, which is very useful if you don't have persistent monitoring and just ad hoc. You can use that as an ad hoc tool. And they say CPU, right?
Yeah, I remember this.
We talked about this, right? CPU. Yeah. So this very release is confirmation that I'm right. Okay, we have CPU when we see null. But Postgres documentation says null means no, not waiting. But from time to time, we see new wait event is added. And here we also see it for, I think, checkpoint, waiting for checkpoint or something. Yeah? There is something, right? Custom, extension to define custom wait events, it's great.
Yes.
But if we don't define it, we have null, right? And monitoring systems visualize it as CPU. But also this release adds checkpoint delays.
I blame the monitoring systems for that, not Postgres.
Yeah. Of course. It's like this. I'm just explaining the problem with naming, and it's very hard to escape from this problem. I recently participated again, so let me explain. So, wait event is null means not waiting according to documentation, but it's not fully fair, and this is a problem of Postgres documentation. It should say not waiting or waiting on wait event which you not yet defined, right?
Or unknown, like it's,
unknown, right? This is null meaning unknown.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's hard, but because it's about code coverage. We need to cover more and more code with this wait event analysis, which is great. Like I was super skeptical 3-4 years ago. Now I think wait event analysis should be in the center of many dashboards. So then monitoring systems just make another step in this confusion and say CPU, green area, CPU. And when we sometimes try to find correlation between spikes of CPU usage And CPU areas, when we also apply segmentation by query ID, we cannot find what's happening. And this release adds new wait events for checkpoint delays by Thomas Munro.
Yeah.
Right? So it means that before 17, it was null, right? And in monitoring, it was CPU. And there's big confusion here. So what should be done in documentation? Probably it should be saying, as you said, like or unknown, right? Or unknown wait event. But in monitoring systems, so it should be CPU or some unknown wait event, right? But recently, I participated in some design of dashboard, and like we discussed this, and it's really hard. Like it's very tempting to put just 3 letters CPU and that's it. But at least it should be CPU, like asterisk and some remark somewhere, right? Yeah.
I think so. Well, it depends. I find this is like a really difficult one where you either want to try and simplify things for people, and sometimes it's okay to lose a bit of the truth when you're simplifying things, but in other cases it really isn't, or it's harmful to remove that detail. And I think this is one of those cases where it might be harmful. But tricky one.
But it's great that this is extended. It's great that we have a dictionary of all events now, and it's also great that there is extensions can extend this wait event list additionally. We already saw PG-star statements wait event, I think starting in 16 or 15, because before it was also null and CPU, but then you see, it's contention at PG-star statements. Remember this episode about 4 million TPS. So yeah, I expect more and more will be covered. But I encourage monitoring system developers to put at least asterisk and remark that it's not at CPU maybe. We can name it CPU maybe in parentheses, right?
Most likely. Yeah, I quite CPU. Like that.
Yeah,
or probably.
Yeah, probability is high that it's CPU and it's actually doing some work, but maybe it's some wait event which not yet defined, right? So it's interesting. Many small changes, including in observability-related things, like I expect monitoring systems will deal with renaming and so on again, right? And
lots of changes there, to be fair, and even like to the views. There's like a new view, I think, as well, but I think it's mostly columns from a different view because it didn't make sense for them to live there. So
congratulate Andrei Borodin, and also I wanted to congratulate all checkpoints, which now have their own system view PG-star checkpoints. They first to leave, like, information about checkpoints was always in PG-star buffer cache, which was ridiculous and unclear. I saw many confusions. Finally, it's resolved. Great.
Was it in BG Writer or
PG Writer? Sorry, not buffer cache. Yeah. I was just looking at background writer, which is like additional mechanism, but checkpointer is the main mechanism, right? But stats for both until 17 was present in PG-stat BG Writer. Now we have 2 separate system views and no more confusion, which is great. But more work on shoulders of monitoring system developers.
Yeah, and I don't envy those folks that are having to update for Postgres 17, but there's definitely some already have done it. Like, I was checking out PGWatch 2, and they look like they've got a branch for it. I don't know if it's been merged yet. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
Is dead. Yeah. PGWatch 3 is being developed, and it was renamed to PGWatch without numbers.
Oh, cool. Well, on their PGWatch 2 repository.
Okay, it's not dead, but the focus is, it's not bad. Like recently, I guess Pavlo Golub renamed it to PGWatch without numbers, so no more confusion in the future. But as I understand, it's not yet fully released, and maybe what you talk about is in the old PGWatch 2, and we maintain the fork of PGWatch with our own dashboards. Looking forward to merging efforts, uniting efforts in the future with main PGWatch.
Before you have to add Postgres 17 support yourself?
I don't know, honestly. I just thankfully, with AI, it's faster now. You say, this is my code, this is changes, like, help me to develop the change and so on. Yeah. So it's because
But
it's
yeah,
quite mechanical, this change.
Actually, before we move on to support from various others, I actually haven't mentioned my favorite feature. Well, maybe not. I don't think it's the most important feature in Postgres 17 by a long way, but I think it might be the one I end up using the most. And I don't know if you saw this, but you can now provide parameters to the random function, and you can do them, for example, in integers. So you could do random 1, 100, and you get a random integer between 1 and 100.
Yeah. But it's just syntax sugar, it's convenience.
I
change.
know, but I think the amount of times in example code I'm writing, or even in real things, you're having to then multiply that by a number and then do like seal or floor, or like it's just like a load of cruft that you have to put around something, and I think it makes it less clear in like a blog post or something exactly what you're doing there. So I think I'll end up using that the most.
Yeah. Also, let me return us to the area of confusion resolution. I remember how I shoot several feet of myself in the past using -d originally with pSQL because it's database, right? Like it felt not convenient to specify database without any options, so I got used to using the -d database. And then suddenly I had some nasty situations when with pgbench, if you use -d, something goes very wrong. Because there it means debug.
Oh.
Yeah, it was interesting, I now remember. So Postgres 17 resolves this. -d means database in both utilities now.
Even in pgbench now. Wow.
Yeah, and -debug is the new option for pgbench. So one more confusion to be resolved. That's great.
Nice. Yeah.
This release is confusion resolution release.
Yeah.
If we forget about PG wait events, right? Because okay.
Well, it's reduced still.
Balance is positive. I must
exactly.
admit. Yeah, that's great. So yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything like you'd warn people? Like I like to encourage people to upgrade to the major versions.
No.
But mostly because I see people overall having a little bit too much reticence to do so. Like they treat Postgres like most projects and are very, very cautious on upgrades and often lag several versions behind.
Yeah,
so
well,
I like to push people to be a bit more. Yeah.
Of course, it's worth upgrading non-production environments already, like basically now. But on production environments, it's worth upgrading when it will be 17.1.2. And if everyone follows this rule, waiting for 17.1, it will be lacking improvements and fixes. So of course, if you can afford upgrading some less critical clusters, it should be done earlier.
Or if the benefits are worth it. If there's a project that would massively benefit, then those ones might be worth a bit more risk.
It happens sometimes, but still, my recommendation for critical, super important clusters, I would wait a little bit, or perform very thorough testing myself.
Yeah,
myself with my team, and only then upgrade. Because jumping straight to 17.0 in critical production, sounds crazy, and any SRE or DBRE will admit it. This is conflicting recommendation. Let's upgrade faster, and let's be very cautious that some bugs might happen because it's just released. There should be balance here as well.
Well, I'll be interested to see what people do. If you do upgrade soon, let us know how it goes, and let the Postgres community know as well. I think there's a lot of people that have worked hard on this. It's always great for them to get that feedback.
Yeah, in our lab environments, we already have 17 and start using it since a few days ago. In all environments, we have 17 supported, so we benchmarks and so on already on 17, and it's already something. It's not production, of course, but it's not already something if some bugs happen. And what's good in our case, in many cases we compare with previous versions, so it's super easy with our AI, and I hope we will find some problems and report.
Yeah, the main obviously there's risks, but there's also, it's well worth checking the support from the tools you use, like extensions. Often a lot of the ones I checked haven't yet
Many
announced,
already.
Postgres 17.
Yeah,
many do, but many
yeah.
don't as well. And
Yeah,
many
but
big
many
ones
do.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah. A few days ago, I approved a merge request for DBLab
Nice.
engine, and we have extensions, a lot of extensions in our custom images for Postgres. And I saw on this, like I expected much longer list of unsupported in 17, but it was like 5 items only. We have dozens of good extensions additionally to
Nice.
contrib modules. Yeah.
Well, some that don't, for example, I didn't see. Did you see Timescale or Citus? I didn't see
Timescale
that
was not there, I think. Yeah, it's big. It's big. Let me
PG
quickly check.
Repack as well. I didn't see.
Yeah.
Like these are ones that it doesn't matter to somebody if like most of their extensions are supported. If there's one that they're using that is critical and it's not supported, then
Yeah, I'm
that's-
looking at the list, and yeah, indeed, PG Repack, PG Qual Stats, it's POVA, and the Timescale, Citus, you're right.
And again, hopefully in the next few days, a lot of these will change. They could easily be waiting, hopefully as of Thursday, which is yesterday if you're listening to this on the day it's released.
But
Go on.
PG Vector is fine. It's already
Yeah.
it's already supporting 17.
Yeah, and lots of other tools have already, like we shipped Postgres 17 support the other day. Patroni as well, version 17 support already. Like loads of tools do, which is great.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's great.
I just thought it was worth saying. It's worth people checking that the tools they rely on do support it already.
Good. Okay.
Nice. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that's it. Upgrade, but carefully.
Yeah. Or at least check out the release notes and see if there's anything important in there for you.
Right. Good. Thank you, Michael.
Nice one, Nikolai. Take care. See you soon.